The energy blade hummed 3 inches from my throat. I didn't move. Couldn't move. The Valtheran Royal Guard had me on my knees in the crystalline throne room, hands bound behind my back with molecular restraints that burned against my skin. Queen Silvara sat motionless on her elevated seat, her silver eyes fixed on me with the kind of cold calculation that had conquered 17 star systems. "The human dies at sunset," she said. Her voice carried no anger, no passion, just certainty. I'd known this might happen. Known it the moment I'd crossed into restricted space 6 months ago. Known it when I'd crashed on Valthera Prime. Known it especially when I'd fallen in love with her daughter. The guard captain stepped forward, his ceremonial armor catching the light from the twin suns filtering through the dome above. He carried the execution warrant in one hand, already sealed with the Queen's blood mark. Protocol demanded he read it aloud before carrying out the sentence. "Jace Corin of Earth," he began, his voice steady and formal. "You stand accused of violating the sanctuary laws, entering royal territory without authorization, and loving someone I shouldn't have. I interrupted. I know." The Queen's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on the armrest of her throne. Behind her, the 3 council members watched in silence. They'd already voted. Execution was unanimous. I'd been prepared to die the moment they'd caught me. What I hadn't been prepared for was never seeing Lyria again. They'd separated us at the border checkpoint, dragged me to the capital while she screamed my name. That had been 2 days ago. 2 days in a cell, knowing that every breath might be my last. The captain continued reading. Listing my crimes in the flat, emotionless tone that Valtheran law required, I barely heard him. My mind kept returning to the lake house where Lyria and I had spent our final night together, watching the meteor showers paint streaks across the sky. She'd held my hand and told me her mother would understand eventually. That love transcended species, transcended politics. I'd wanted to believe her. "The sentence is death by dissolution," the captain finished, "to be carried out immediately upon the Queen's command." They'd break down my molecular structure until nothing remained but scattered atoms. Clean. Efficient. No body to recover, no grave to mark. It was the traditional execution method for enemies of the crown. Queen Silvera rose from her throne. She moved with the fluid grace common to her species, her ceremonial robes flowing around her like liquid metal. She descended the 7 steps to the main floor, each footfall echoing in the silent chamber. When she stood directly before me, I finally met her eyes. "You knew the laws," she said quietly. "You knew what would happen if you were discovered." "I did. Yet you stayed. You pursued my daughter despite the consequences." "I loved her," I said. "I still do. That doesn't change just because you're going to kill me." Something flickered across her face. Not sympathy, something harder to define. She studied me for a long moment, and I wondered what she saw. A human, barely 25 standard years old, who'd crashed on her planet while running supplies to a mining colony. Someone who should have reported to the authorities, should have followed protocol, should have done anything except fall in love with the crown princess. "Love," the Queen repeated as if tasting the word. "My daughter used that same word when we arrested you. She begged me to spare your life." She wept. "She made promises she has no authority to keep." My heart clenched. I'd hoped they'd kept Lyria away from all this, but of course they hadn't.
She was the princess.
She had to learn that duty came before emotion, that the laws applied to everyone, even to her. "Where is she now?" I asked. "Confined to her quarters. Under guard. She will not interfere with justice." Justice. The word felt hollow, but I understood it from the Queen's perspective. I was an outsider, a human who'd violated their most sacred laws. The sanctuary laws existed for a reason. Valthera had been invaded twice in its history, nearly destroyed both times. They'd learned to be careful about who they allowed into their territory, into their lives, into their families. The Queen gestured to the captain. "Prepare the dissolution chamber." He bowed and moved toward the eastern archway where I knew the execution room waited. I'd seen images of it during my interrogation. A spherical chamber filled with quantum disruptors that would tear apart every bond in my body. They said it was painless, instantaneous. I hoped they were right. The guards hauled me to my feet. The restraints bit deeper into my wrists, and I tasted blood where I'd bitten my lip. This was it. The end. I'd never see Earth again, never see my family, never see Lyria's smile, or hear her laugh, or hold her while she told me stories about the ancient Valtheran Empire. We were halfway to the archway when the doors exploded inward. I say exploded, but that's not quite right. They didn't shatter. They simply opened with such force that they slammed against the walls, the sound echoing like thunder through the throne room. Every guard spun toward the entrance, weapons charging. Lyria stood in the doorway. She was supposed to be confined, supposed to be under guard. Instead, she stood there in a simple white dress, her lavender skin flushed with effort, her chest heaving, her silver hair, so like her mother's, hung loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual formal braids. And in her arms, she carried a child. The throne room fell absolutely silent. The child couldn't have been more than 3 years old. She had Lyria's silver hair and lavender skin, but her eyes were human brown. My brown. She looked around the chamber with wide-eyed curiosity, utterly unafraid of the armed guards or the queen or the charged atmosphere. "Mother," Lyria said, her voice shaking but determined, "before you execute Jace, there's something you need to know." Her eyes were locked on the child, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked genuinely shocked. "Lyria," she said slowly. "Oh, what have you done? What I had to do." Lyria walked forward, her steps measured and careful. The guards didn't stop her. They seemed frozen, uncertain how to handle this breach of protocol. "This is Mira." "Your granddaughter." My mind reeled. Granddaughter. That meant. I stared at the child in Lyria's arms, really looked at her for the first time. The resemblance was impossible to deny. She had Lyria's face shape, my eye color, a blend of features that could only mean one thing. "That's impossible," I whispered. "We only met 6 months ago." "Valtheran pregnancy is accelerated," Lyria said, not looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on her mother. 3 months from conception to birth. I've been hiding her in the outer provinces with people I trusted. But I couldn't let you execute her father without her knowing him, without you knowing she existed. The queen hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. She simply stared at the child with an expression I couldn't read. The child, Myra, squirmed in Lyria's arms and pointed at me. "Mama, who's that man?" "That's..." Lyria's voice broke. "That's your father, sweetheart." "Why is he sad?" "Because grandmother made a decision without knowing about you." Mira frowned, considering this with the serious expression only a small child can manage. Then she looked directly at the queen. "Grandmother, why are you hurting my papa?" Actually flinched. It was the first uncontrolled reaction I'd seen from her. "I didn't know," she said softly. "Lyria, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew what you'd do. Knew you'd separate them, or worse. Knew you'd never allow a half-human heir to exist. So I hid her, protected her, the way a mother should." The queen heard it. So did everyone else in the chamber. "The laws exist for a reason," the queen said, but her voice lacked its earlier certainty. "The laws are meant to protect us," Lyria countered, "not destroy us. You taught me that. You taught me that a queen's first duty is to her people, and that includes all her people, even the ones who don't fit neatly into our traditions." Mira was still staring at me. Then she did something that changed everything. She reached out her small arms toward me and said, "Papa, pick me up." The guards looked to their captain. The captain looked to the queen. The queen looked at her granddaughter, reaching for a man she'd condemned to death. "Let him hold her," the queen said quietly. The guards released my arms. The molecular restraints fell away, leaving angry red marks on my wrists. I walked forward on shaking legs, hardly believing this was happening. Lyria gently transferred Mira into my arms. She was warm and solid and real. She wrapped her small arms around my neck and whispered, "Don't be sad, Papa. Mama says you're brave." I held my daughter for the first time and felt something break apart inside me. Not dissolution, not destruction, something else. Some wall I'd built around my heart to prepare for death. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." "You're here now," she said simply, with the absolute logic of childhood. The queen descended from her throne again. This time, she didn't stop until she stood directly before us. Up close, I could see the fine lines around her eyes, the weight of centuries of rule etched into her features. She reached out slowly, hesitantly, and touched Mira's silver hair. "She has the royal mark," the queen said, her voice barely audible. She turned Mira's small hand over, revealing a constellation of luminescent marks on her palm. Every member of the royal bloodline carried them. "She's legitimate." "Yes," Lyria said, "in every way that matters." The queen's hand trembled slightly as she traced the marks. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Uncertainty. "The laws are absolute," she said. "They have to be, or we risk everything our ancestors built." "But," she glanced at Mira again, But perhaps there are exceptions, circumstances that require wisdom rather than rigid adherence to tradition. Mother, Lyria said carefully, what are you saying? Time to think, to consult the council, to determine how to proceed. The human cannot simply be released without consequence. The laws were broken. But neither can I execute the father of my granddaughter without considering what that would mean for her future, for all our futures. But it wasn't death either. The captain cleared his throat. Your Majesty, the execution warrant is suspended, the Queen said firmly, until further notice. Take the human to the diplomatic quarters. He is no longer a prisoner, but he is not free to leave the palace grounds. Is that understood? Yes, Your Majesty. I should have felt relief. Instead, I just felt exhausted. The adrenaline that had been keeping me upright drained away, leaving me hollow. Mira pulled back and looked at my face. You still look sad, Papa? I'm okay, I lied. I'm just tired. Mama says sleep fixes everything. Your mama is very wise. The Queen gestured to Lyria. Take them to the East Wing. They can remain together for now. But this conversation isn't over. We will speak again tomorrow, and you will answer every question I have, every single one. Yes, Mother. As the guards escorted us from the throne room, I glanced back at the Queen. She stood alone in that vast chamber, surrounded by her council and her guards, but somehow isolated. She met my eyes for a brief moment, and I saw something there that surprised me. Fear. Not of me, fear of what came next. Fear of making the wrong choice. Fear of what this moment might mean for her kingdom, her legacy, her family. I understood that fear. I carried it with me as we walked through the crystalline corridors, Mira heavy and warm in my arms, Lyria's hand clasped tightly in mine. Whatever happened next, nothing would be simple. The laws existed for reasons that predated all of us. The Queen couldn't simply ignore them, even for her granddaughter. But she'd hesitated. That hesitation was everything. The diplomatic quarters were larger than my cell had been, with windows that overlooked the royal gardens. Real furniture, real beds, a bathroom with running water, luxury after 2 days on cold stone. Lyria put Mira down, and the child immediately began exploring, touching everything with wonder. She'd spent her entire short life in hiding, away from the palace. This was all new to her. I'm sorry, Lyria said as soon as Mira was out of earshot. I should have told you about her sooner. Should have brought her to you. I was just so afraid. I kissed her, cut off her apology with the kiss I'd thought I'd never get to give her again. When we pulled apart, she was crying. I thought I'd lost you, she whispered. When they took you away, I thought I'd never see you again. You saved my life, you and Mira both. I just delayed the inevitable. My mother won't let this go. She can't. The council won't allow it, even if she wanted to. There are factions that already think she's too lenient, too willing to compromise with outsiders. This will give them exactly the ammunition they need. She was right. I knew she was right. But for the first time in 2 days, I had hope. Then we fight, I said. Together, we find a way to make this work. How? You're human. Our laws explicitly forbid mixing bloodlines with non-Valtherans. Even if my mother wanted to change that, it would require a unanimous council vote. That's never going to happen. Maybe not. But your mother hesitated. She saw Mira, and she hesitated. That's something. Lyria leaned against me, her body shaking. I'm so tired, Jace. I've been hiding, lying, running for months. Trying to protect everyone and failing. I just want this to be over. It will be, I promised, knowing I might be lying. One way or another, it will be. Look, Mama, it glows. Lyria managed to smile. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can I keep it? For tonight, but tomorrow we might need to give it back. Why? Because it belongs to Grandmother. Mira considered this. Will Grandmother be mad if I keep it? We'll have to ask her. The child nodded seriously, as if this were the most important decision in the world. Then she yawned, a huge jaw-cracking yawn that made her eyes water. Someone's tired, I said. No, Mira protested, even as she yawned again. Not tired. Come on, Lyria said gently. Let's get you to bed. We tucked her into one of the sleeping chambers, and she was asleep before we even finished pulling the covers up. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her breathe, marveling at the fact that she existed at all. She looks like you when she sleeps, Lyria said softly. She looks like you all the time. She has your stubbornness, your sense of humor, your tendency to trust people who don't deserve it. I trusted you. That worked out. Did it? You're still under threat of execution. But I got to meet my daughter. I got to hold you again. That's more than I had this morning. Then she said, my mother's afraid. I saw it in her eyes. She's terrified of what this means. Real change, not just political maneuvering. The laws about bloodline purity aren't just tradition. They're a response to trauma. Our people were nearly destroyed by genetic weapons in the last war. Weapons designed to target our specific biology. We closed ourselves off to protect against that happening again. I'd heard versions of this story during my time on Valthera. The details varied, but the core truth remained. The Valtherans had good reasons for their isolation. But that was centuries ago, I said. Trauma doesn't have an expiration date. My mother lived through some of that war. She was young, but she remembers. She watched people she loved die from weapons that shouldn't have existed. So yes, she's afraid. Afraid that opening ourselves up again will lead to the same destruction. And you think she'll choose fear over family? I think she'll choose her people over everything else. That's what a queen does. The words settled over us like a weight. We sat there in the dim light, watching our daughter sleep, knowing that tomorrow could bring anything. Eventually, Lyria fell asleep curled against my side. I stayed awake, thinking about the queen's face when she'd seen Mira. The shock, yes, but also something else. Recognition, maybe? Or possibility. I thought about my own mother, back on Earth. She'd never know about her granddaughter. Never know what had happened to me. I'd left Earth on a routine supply run and vanished. By now, they'd have declared me dead. Maybe I was dead, in a sense. The person I'd been before Valthera was gone, I'd become someone else here. Someone who'd broken laws he didn't fully understand, for a love he couldn't explain. Someone who'd created new life against impossible odds. A father. The sun was rising when the door opened. I tensed, expecting guards, but it was the queen. Alone. She stood in the doorway looking at the three of us on the bed. "May I come in?" she asked quietly. I carefully extracted myself from Lyria and Mira, trying not to wake them. The queen and I faced each other in the main room, morning light streaming through the windows. "I've been awake all night," she said without preamble, "thinking about what to do with you. With this situation, the laws are clear. You violated our most sacred boundaries. You should die for that." But she trailed off, looking toward the sleeping chamber where Mira lay. "But executing you would hurt my granddaughter. It would hurt my daughter, and it would make me the kind of ruler I've always sworn not to become." "What kind is that?" "The kind who values law over justice, who can't see past tradition to possibility." She turned back to me, her silver eyes hard. "I need you to understand something, human. I don't like you. I don't trust you. Everything in my training, my experience, my history tells me that you're a threat. That allowing you to live, to remain here, will bring disaster. Because my granddaughter called you Papa. Because she reached for you without hesitation or fear. Children know things adults forget. They see clearly without all the complications we add." The queen paused. "And because Lyria was willing to risk everything to protect you both. My daughter has many flaws, but cowardice isn't one of them. If she believes in you that much, then I have to at least consider that I might be wrong." It wasn't acceptance, but it was a crack in the wall. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we find a solution, one that doesn't destroy my kingdom or my family. One that acknowledges the laws were broken, but also recognizes that something precious was created from that breaking. The council meets this afternoon. You will attend, and they'll vote on my execution. They'll vote on your fate. What that fate is depends on many things. On how you present yourself, on what compromises can be made, on whether we can find a path forward that satisfies both law and mercy. You're asking me to defend my life in front of people who've already decided I should die." "Yes," the queen said bluntly. "That's exactly what I'm asking. Because the alternative is that I make a unilateral decision, and that would split my council. Some would support me, others would revolt. The kingdom can't afford that division right now. There are external threats, political pressures, treaties hanging by threads. I need consensus, or as close to it as possible. And if they vote for execution anyway?" The queen met my eyes. "Then I'll have to decide whether being a good queen means following the law or protecting my family. I genuinely don't know which I'll choose." The honesty in that statement was startling. She wasn't trying to comfort me or give me false hope. She was being as direct as she knew how. "I appreciate you telling me," I said. "Don't mistake honesty for kindness. I'm telling you because you deserve to know what you're facing, and because I need you to be prepared. The council will be hostile. They will question everything about you, your motives, your presence here. They will try to break you, to prove you're not worthy of my daughter or granddaughter. You'll need to be strong. I will be. For Mira's sake, I hope that's true. The queen turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Your daughter's existence changes the succession. She carries the royal marks. Under our law, that makes her eligible to inherit. There will be factions that see her as a threat for that reason alone. She's a half-human heir to the Valtheran throne. To some, that's an abomination. To others, it's an opportunity. Either way, she's in danger now. They know she exists, and they'll act on that knowledge. Keep her close. Trust no one outside this room. With that, the queen left. I stood there processing her words, trying to understand the full scope of what we were facing. Lyria emerged from the sleeping chamber, her hair mussed. How much of that did you hear? I was awake. Your mother's trying to help. My mother's trying to manage a crisis. There's a difference. Lyria came to stand beside me, looking out at the gardens. The council will vote against you. You know that, right? They'll cite tradition, security concerns, the sanctity of bloodlines. They'll make it sound reasonable and necessary, but your mother might override them and tear the kingdom apart in the process. We're not just talking about politics here, Jace. We're talking about beliefs that go back thousands of years. The idea that Valtheran blood must remain pure isn't just law, it's religion for some people. My mother can't simply decree that wrong. Then what do? We find allies among the council. We make the case that laws can evolve without losing their meaning. We show them that Mira isn't a threat, but a bridge, a way forward that honors the past while embracing the future. It sounded good. It sounded possible. But we both knew how fragile that hope was. We spent the morning with Mira, trying to give her some sense of normalcy despite the palace guards stationed outside our door. She asked questions constantly, about the palace, about the guards, about why we couldn't go outside. Lyria answered patiently, spinning stories that made our confinement sound like an adventure. I watched them together and felt my heart break. Whatever happened at the council meeting, I couldn't let Mira suffer for my choices. She deserved better than a life lived in fear or hiding. At midday, a servant arrived with formal clothes for me. Traditional Valtheran ceremonial wear adapted for a human body. The message was clear. I would stand before the council as a supplicant, following their customs, subject to their judgment. I dressed carefully, Lyria helping with the complicated fastenings. When I was ready, I looked almost Valtheran. Almost? You look good, she said softly. I look terrified. That too. But Jace, whatever happens in there, know that I love you. That Mira loves you. That you gave us something precious, even if it only lasts a little while longer. Don't talk like that. We're going to get through this. Maybe, but if we don't, I need you to know. I pulled her close, breathing in her scent, trying to memorize this moment. Then Mira came running over, wanting to know why we were hugging without her, and we pulled her into our arms. The guards came for me too soon. They escorted me through the palace, deeper into its heart, to the council chambers. The room was circular, with 7 seats arranged in a semicircle facing a single chair in the center. The queen sat in the highest seat. The other C's council members were already present, their faces impassive. I was placed in the center chair, exposed. Vulnerable, exactly as they wanted. The queen called the session to order. Her voice was formal, stripped of any warmth or familiarity. We are here to determine the fate of the human Jace Corrin, who stands accused of violating the sanctuary laws and compromising the royal bloodline. Each council member will have the opportunity to question the accused. At the conclusion, we will vote on the appropriate sentence. Are there any objections to this procedure? Silence. Then we begin. Counselor Vex, you may proceed. He leaned forward, studying me with eyes that had seen centuries pass. Human, he said, his voice crackling like dry leaves. Do you understand the laws you broke? I understand that I entered restricted space without authorization. I understand that I formed a relationship with Princess Lyria against Valtheran tradition. I understand that these actions carried severe penalties. Yet you proceeded anyway. Yes, why? It was the question I'd been expecting. The one I'd spent all morning trying to answer. Because I loved her, I said simply. Because when I crashed here and she found me, she could have left me to die. Instead, she saved my life. She showed me kindness when she had every reason to turn away, and over the months that followed, I came to see who she really was. Not a princess, not a symbol, just a person trying to do right in a complicated world. I fell in love with that person. The laws didn't matter compared to that. So you placed your feelings above the safety of our entire species? No. I placed my feelings above laws I didn't understand and didn't believe applied to love. Love isn't a crime. It can't be legislated away or forbidden by decree. It exists, despite everything we do to control it. Counselor Vex sat back. Pretty words, but they don't change the fact that your presence here threatens everything we've built. Your genetic code could be analyzed, weaponized, used against us. The child you created is a vulnerability we cannot afford. Mira isn't a weapon. She's a 3-year-old girl who deserves the chance to grow up in safety. A 3-year-old girl whose very existence violates our most fundamental laws. Another counselor spoke up, this one younger, her voice sharp. The sanctuary laws exist because our people learned through terrible suffering that isolation is safety. Every time we've opened ourselves to outsiders, we've paid in blood. You ask us to ignore that history, to pretend that love somehow overrides survival. I'm not asking you to ignore anything, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I'm asking you to see that survival can mean different things. Yes, isolation kept you safe.
But it also kept you alone, cut off from possibilities, from growth, from the chance to be part of something larger.
Spoken like someone who hasn't watched his people die from genetic weapons designed to target their specific biology, the counselor snapped. You want us to risk that again? For what? For your feelings? The Queen raised her hand. Counselor Dara, please. The human is answering our questions.
We will maintain civility, but I could see the writing on the wall.
They didn't want answers. They wanted justification for a decision they'd already made. Each question was designed to paint me as naive, dangerous, or both. The interrogation went on for hours. They'd picked apart every decision I'd made, every moment I'd spent with Lyria. They questioned my motives, my character, my understanding of Valthuran culture. Some were hostile, others merely cold, but none seemed to open to the possibility that I might be worth saving. Finally, the Queen called for a vote. The question before us is this, she said formally. Does the human Jace Corrin deserve death for his crimes, or is there an alternative sentence that serves both justice and the kingdom's interests? We will vote in order of seniority. Counselor Vex, your vote. The old counselor looked at me for a long moment. Death. The laws are absolute. To make an exception invites chaos. My heart sank. Counselor Dara? Death. For the safety of our people. Counselor Thane? A middle-aged man with scarred hands spoke. I vote for exile. Return him to his people with a warning never to return. Let him live, but remove the threat. It wasn't freedom, but it was better than dissolution. A small mercy. Counselor Mira? I started at the name, the same as my daughter's. The counselor was a woman with kind eyes. I abstain. This decision troubles me too deeply to vote with certainty. The law is clear. For death, 1 for exile, 1 abstention. 2 votes remained. Counselor Lyros? The youngest counselor, barely older than Lyria, stood. I vote for a trial period. Allow the human to prove himself. 6 months to demonstrate his value to our kingdom. If he fails, exile or death can follow. But let us at least attempt wisdom before we choose finality. The Queen nodded slowly. 3 for death, 1 for exile, 1 for trial, 1 abstention. My vote decides the outcome. She looked directly at me. Jace Corrin, I have listened to the arguments. I have weighed the law against other considerations. My decision is this. You will be granted a trial period of 6 months. During this time, you will work to prove your value to Valthira. You will demonstrate that your presence here benefits rather than threatens our people. At the end of 6 months, we will vote again. If the vote goes against you then, the sentence will be carried out without further appeal. Is this acceptable? It wasn't a pardon. It was a stay of execution. But it was life, at least for now. Yes, Your Majesty, I said, my voice rough. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The conditions of your trial will be severe. You will be monitored constantly. Any violation of our laws, any threat to our security will result in immediate execution. You will work in the service of the kingdom, performing tasks assigned to you without question or complaint. And most importantly, you will demonstrate that the child you created can be integrated into our society without compromising our values or safety. Fail any of these conditions, and you die. Do you understand? I understand. Then this council is adjourned. Guards, escort the human to his quarters. Tomorrow his trial begins. As they led me from the chamber, I caught the Queen's eye one final time. She gave me the smallest of nods. Not approval, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. She'd given me a chance. What I did with it was up to me. Back in our quarters, Lyria and Mira were waiting. Mira ran to me immediately, wrapping herself around my legs. "Papa, you're back." I scooped her up, holding her tight. "I'm back, sweetheart, and I'm staying. For 6 months at least."
Your mother actually gave you 6 months.
She did. And if I prove myself, maybe more. Maybe everything. Or maybe nothing. If the vote goes against you again. We show them that I'm worth keeping, that our family is worth protecting. That love isn't a threat, it's a strength. Mira looked between us, not understanding but sensing the emotion. "Are you sad, Mama?" "No, baby. I'm happy." Sometimes people cry when they're happy. That's silly. I know, but it's true. That night we lay together in the large bed, Mira between us, her small body warm and trusting. Outside, the twin moons rose over the palace gardens, painting everything in silver light. 6 months, Lyria whispered. We have 6 months to change an entire kingdom's mind. Then we'd better get started. I love you, Jace Corin of Earth. I love you, Lyria of Valthera, and I'm not going anywhere. It was a promise I meant to keep. Whatever it took, however hard the trial became, I would prove myself worthy. For Lyria, for Mira, for the impossible family we'd created against all odds. The execution had been stopped, but our real fight was just beginning.